Good morning. Good morning. And we've got our state senator Betsy Johnson joining us today. Good morning, Betsy.
Good morning and happy almost 2016.
I know it's going to be a great year.
I hope
But
so.
you know, I was going to ask you. Betsy and I were visiting just briefly before we came on the air. The I felt kind of strange, Betsy. We went through all of that horrendous stuff. The most critical part, I think, being about December 9th or so for everyone, and then right after that, say, "Are you ready for Christmas?"
Well, yeah, and I felt great kinship this year with many of the people who had sustained losses. My husband and I rarely take any time off, so we decided we would sneak a couple of extra days at Christmas, and we slipped over to Central Oregon, where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And the second day we were there, our housekeeper called and said, I went over to feed the cats, and you're not going to guess what happened. The neighbor's tree is in your kitchen.
Oh, my goodness. I'm glad you weren't home.
Well, I am, too. It took the cats 2 days to come out from under the bed.
I bet.
And it was, it could have been worse. But I've so often seen pictures on the television or on the front page of the newspaper where somebody's had a tree come through their house. And I always thought, God, that must be awful. Well, I'm here to tell you it's awful.
It's awful.
The wind blew so hard in Scappoose, there were trees down all over the place. And my husband was joking about the fact that we had our Christmas tree delivered right into the kitchen. So the neighbor's great big fir tree crashed through our kitchen. And now, of course, we're dealing with all of the things that people that sustain property losses deal with. You've got to get the contractors lined up and get the tree out of the house, and you then got to figure out what the scope of the damage is, and the appraisers and the insurance people, and getting a contractor to come and fix it. And so it has been a more eventful than most Christmas.
Well, sometimes that first-hand knowledge has come by better ways.
Well, absolutely, but it has given me a personal connection to the people that are suffering losses. And I know, for example, in Tillamook, there are some people that are suffering losses who aren't going to be able to turn to their homeowner's policy.
Exactly. When we look at I'm thinking of the Cautries there out on off the Tillamook River. That's just, and there was some damage to a much lesser degree. I mean, to have the one that I'm thinking of is a family that a few homes that the road's just gone.
Right, and one doesn't think about the nuances in an insurance policy until one calls on the policy. Over my professional life, I've had some pretty complicated policies. When we were in the helicopter business, we were insured by Lloyd's of London. And I'm here to tell you that's an experience. They have a thing at Lloyd's called the Laurentian Bell, and they used to ring it when there was an accident that meant that Lloyd's was going to pay on a policy. This goes back hundreds of years.
Interesting.
And we had an accident up at Mount St. Helens, and thank God nobody was hurt, but we were the prime contractor to the U.S. Geological Survey in the volcano, and we pioneered the discovery of a thing called the curtain of turbulence. And to make a long story short, we had a helicopter go down in the mountain. And so when my husband and I went to London to renew the policy, and this was a huge loss for us, $750,000 loss, huge deductible. And so I said to our fellow at Lloyd's, did you ring the bell when 49 Lima crashed? And he looked at me and he went, Madam, that's a clue that the conversation isn't going to go well. Madam, we didn't ring the bell for Tenerife. And Tenerife, of course, was when two 747s collided with each other at great loss of life. So it gives you the magnitude of the losses that Lloyd's cover. The point of my story is that those folks that are at Cottrey Hill, I've talked to a number of them. I know Commissioner Labhart has talked to a number of them. And one doesn't think about the subtle exclusionary parts of a policy until you call on the policy. And so whether or not there will be any public assistance available to them, I think remains very much in doubt. I spoke with Commissioner Labhart about this issue yesterday when we were at another meeting, and I'll tell you about that one. That's a very important meeting for Tillamook County. But I spoke to him about it, and the final day for tallying up the damage has now come and gone in all of the counties. And, of course, the county commissioners asked Governor Brown to declare emergencies, and she did. And so then the next question is there a presidential declaration? And then FEMA can be motivated or activated
Right.
And the difficulty is, though, for many private folks, FEMA is in the business of putting back together public infrastructure. And what generally remains for private people is the opportunity to get small business low-interest loans. But it's still a financial obligation on the part of the homeowner who has sustained a loss. It's a very complicated process. Even when it goes well, it has enormous complications. Michelle Bradley out at the port will tell you the complications that she's had administering some of the FEMA money that she got.
Exactly.
And when Vernonia flooded in, it was a presidential declaration, and we were trying to help people mitigate the loss of their homes. It's a very, very complicated process.
And a lot of times, I mean, we were able, City of Bay City was able to take advantage of well over $1 million for that assisted with the intertie of our water with City of Tillamook, and the two river crossings that now are under crossings on the kiltus of our water mains. But you got to spend the money before you get reimbursed.
Well, and those are public infrastructure.
Exactly. Again, entirely different.
And you're right, it's a reimbursement process that sometimes takes years, and the paperwork is daunting. So, but the biggest point is that many people have reached out to either the commissioners or to me, and I presume to Representative Boone, saying, what is the government, whether it's state or federal, going to do for us? And it is with regret that the answer is not very much, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we're still assessing the damage. My advice to people is document, document, document. We had pictures taken of the tree through the kitchen from every angle we could. We're keeping separate track of the hours involved in the cleanup, the crane that came to lift the tree up. Keep track of all of these expenses and keep a separate notebook of everybody you've talked to, all of their phone numbers, so that as you get ready to put the claim back together again, you've got a very good paper trail and a pictorial trail, because pictures, as we all know, speak 1,000 words. So
absolutely.
Document, document, document if there's any hope for any possible either your own policy or later small business response from FEMA if that's a route that people decide to take.
Well, I tell you, Betsy, and I know you must have seen it over there in Scappoose too, the way our people came together, the four-wheeler, landlocked with the 101, and then certainly no way to get north. And there's Sheldon making sure that water gets up there, and so many cases like that throughout the county, a neighbor helping neighbor, farmers making sure that cows got milked and fed, and it was pretty impressive, but by golly, it's Tillamook County.
Well, and don't forget the good old hams. And you're talking to Kilo Foxtrot 7 Hotel Foxtrot. The hams have come through time and time and time again. But you're right, and it's especially poignant at Christmas. I remember distinctly Vernonia went underwater the last time.
Oh, yes, Gordon Smith, a good friend.
Well,
yeah.
and when you said Gordon, we all are in a huge debt to Gordon McCrae, who keeps those.
McCrae, yes, our Gordon, yes.
Keeps those wonderful weather reports. What an added bonus to have a meteorologist and his willingness to put out his report.
And he's our Director of Emergency Management. And another one that I want to thank is Leanne Neal, the Tillamook County pioneer. That woman and her people, so impressive. The coverage, keeping us informed, and the advantages of having social media and what people can. I think people were maybe less likely to drive through a place. They didn't take that road. They knew they couldn't go to Miami today.
Well, and two other shout-outs. Public Works, Tillamook County Public
Leanne.
Works. There's another wonderful Leanne. And the PUD.
Yes.
I don't think we give enough credit to the guys that keep the systems working. And I will remember forever in the storm of 2007 being over in Tillamook on Highway 6, and the PUD was out there trying to put things back together again in conditions that could only be described as horrifically challenging. That there they were.
Well, we're visiting with our state senator, Betsy Johnson. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. But, Tillamook Bay Community College, they recognize that due to challenging weather conditions over the winter break, students may have experienced difficulties registering for winter term. In an effort to give all students in our community an opportunity to register with no late registration fee, winter term registration will remain open until 5, Tuesday evening, January 5th. Winter term classes will begin as scheduled the week of January 4th. That's next Monday, and all registered students are expected to attend the first day of class. Students can register online through the TBCC website, www.tillamookbaycc.edu, or in person at the campus on 3rd Street. And remember, 2016 rings in the 35th anniversary of Tillamook Bay Community College. If you're a TBCC alumni, the college would like to say thank you with a special gift in 2016. Graduates can register for 1 credit course free of charge. All it takes is for you to have already earned your degree from TBCC, a desire to continue your education, and to stop by the college to confirm your degree and register for the class. Remember, registration for winter term has been extended through January 5th at 5. So if your New Year's resolution is to go back to school, you've got plenty of time to get started. The staff and faculty at Tillamook Bay Community College would like to wish everyone a great start to the new year.
If I could just pile onto that, the legislature has passed a bill that will now help with tuition for community college. It was described as the Oregon Promise, and it basically suggests that everything is going to be free. I voted for the bill. I think that there are going to be some unintended consequences, and I think that the question remains an open question about whether or not the Oregon legislature can keep its promise to the Oregon Promise, because this is an expensive new program.
Mm-hmm.
But when students are approaching the college or talking to the counselors, I think that the registration date to get into that program is in March. But high school students that are interested in understanding the subtleties of the program might want to contact TBCC and see what all they have to do. There are some obligations on the part of the student, but for some people it's going to work out well, and I don't know, frankly, how long the program is going to be around. It's an incredibly expensive program, and the legislature is going to face some enormous challenges, so I don't know if we can keep re-upping it. But right now it exists, and kids should avail anybody should avail themselves of the opportunity if they meet the criteria.
Well, I know our first-class scholar, and that's what I've always been proud of our Tillamook Bay Community College, but the first-class scholar program, and I don't know how many years that's been in. My son graduated in 2004, and it wasn't in place back then. But if our graduating students have maintained a B average, their tuition's paid at Tillamook Bay Community College. So I like to think that we're the forerunner on some things.
Well,
but again,
wonderful scholarship programs, none the least of which is Mildred's, and what a legacy. I can't be on this show and not talk about Mildred or think about Mildred.
Absolutely.
And the fact that there are scholarships given in her name is just part of her enduring legacy in Tillamook County.
Which is a reminder, people out there, FAFSA, the free aid system, you can go on to FAFSA, and make sure you fill out that FAFSA for your scholarships. Sometimes the best thing to do is get started early. You can start filling them out tomorrow.
That's part of the Oregon Promise. You have to have filled out that form.
Yeah. So now you're going to be back in Salem in a couple of weeks.
We are. 13, 14, 15 are legislative days. Before we talk about legislative days, can I talk about a meeting that...
yes, you mentioned that, yes.
Carol Marie Luthold and Chad Allen and I attended, Representative Gomberg, yesterday, and it's a very important meeting.
Thank you.
The issue was brought forward by Chad Allen, and the concern that Chad and other dairymen raised was the conversion of a lot of productive farmland into estuary, particularly saline wetlands.
Thank you.
And Chad's concern was at a number of levels. First of all, these conservation opportunities don't come at the same level of scrutiny that some other land use processes do. And Chad was urging making the conversion of farmland, especially into estuary, a conditional use. We've stepped back from that a little bit, but I'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
The other thing was the question of liability with respect to the creation of these wetlands and the effect on other property, and moreover, the effect, the proliferation of them on the whole sort of agricultural fabric of a place.
Thank you.
How many farms can you chop up without breaking that connectivity of the land and just how agriculture in such an agricultural dependent place as Tillamook works?
Yes.
And finally, the question that I've worked on, I've introduced bills on multiple occasions to try to allow farmers to take more organic debris out of ditches,
Yes.
just clean ditches. And there is a segment, it's both out in the conservation community as well as embedded in the Division of State Lands, that thinks of those ditches as pristine salmonid habitat. They're not. They're ditches. And so we are rolling out, with the very capable assistance of Mary Ann Nash, who is a lawyer for the Farm Bureau, we're rolling out another iteration of the bill, and we'll do it in 16, and if it doesn't make it in 16, we'll do it in 17. This time, Mary Ann called together all of the people who might have a dog in the fight, including the chairman of the committee that the bill is going to go through, Senator Chris Edwards, who accompanied us on a tour of Tillamook County the end of November.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Gomberg, Senator Roblin, and I accompanied a group of both conservation folks as well as farmers. We toured the Project Exodus. We went out and looked at a Nature Conservancy project. It rained hard that day. Oh, God, it rained sideways.
I think most people know that the Kiltis, to me, those wetlands look different this year.
Yep, and
They went anyway.
so then we went to the creamery and we had a long roundtable conversation. There must have been 40 people in the room to talk about it. So that then resulted in a bill draft. That then resulted in the meeting yesterday, where we had the opportunity to have a conversation with people who might oppose the bill, and our effort to try to bring people along. And I can't express enough my appreciation to Chad for his perseverance in sticking with this. It seems so simple to people in Tillamook County. We just want to take organic matter and sloughed off dirt out of ditches to keep them working properly. Commissioner Labhart at the very end of the meeting expressed his frustration with, we're going from 50 cubic yards to 100. This is the functional equivalent of 5 dump trucks. That is not a threat to the environment,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows farmers to be good stewards of their land and keep the hydrology of the land in balance. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of the people that are doing heavy lifting on this bill, and
Excellent.
I am optimistic, guardedly optimistic, but yesterday moved the ball down the field a long way.
Don't you think, Betsy, with just that week of one of the main problems, the drainage,
Yep.
Water left better. I truly believe in many ways that this last one made me think of the 96, but I felt like the water left better in many ways, and that is because of the work that has been done. Lowton Hooley's place, the Rosenbergs, no water inside because he had 4 trash pumps running. It started with Doug, but Lowton continued it. Rosenberg's is safe now. But Bay City's got the same problem. They kept calling them sinkholes, but I think everybody ultimately realized those were culvert failures on those roads.
Oh, and there are going to be more culvert failures. And then the concomitant problem that comes with the culvert replacement is, again, the effect on people's property. I'm fighting that fight up in Clatsop County with a couple of culverts that failed. 202, Highway 202 is closed. And so you've got to find that balance between people's property rights with a culvert replacement that may be a different size,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to get the highway open. And then for a lot of folks, they want to be able to put tide gates on those culverts. And that process is so cumbersome. ODOT issues the permit, but you have to have consultation and agreement with Division of State Lands and ODF&W. And I have discovered that getting through the ODF&W process that's a threading a very fine needle.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kind of embedded group of bureaucrats, for lack of a better word, who are, in my view, way overly process oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we're trying to replace tide gates that have been there and functioning for years and years.
Exactly.
So.
Well, thank you for helping fight the fight. That's for sure.
It's not me. I'm the instrumentality of getting the bill introduced. It's the Carol Marie Lutholds. It's the Mark Labharts.
Yeah.
It's the Chad Allens. It's the folks from Tillamook and Senator Roblin, Representative Gomber,
Sure.
Representative Boone. We're all on the legislative side, but we're going to necessarily rely on a bunch of people from Tillamook to come down and help tell the story. Every person of the legislature says they value farm and forest land. Then why do we make it so damn hard to farm?
I know, but we've got eloquent people, Carol Marie, Mark Labhart, Leo Kuntz, people that know the issues, that can get down there and will talk and hopefully be listened to.
Yep. Well, we're sure going to work at it. Just of interest to folks as we're getting towards the end of the show, there are a whole bunch of new laws that take effect in the new year.
Our farmers aren't too thrilled about the
well,
late notice on a couple of them, too.
I voted against a lot of them. Some of these are really going to be difficult. Paid sick leave.
Yes, that's the one coming up.
I voted no, and that one is so complicated. Motor voter, I voted against that one. And these complicated bills get such simple descriptions. Motor voter will help people engage in the civic process. No, it won't. It's a retroactive bill that reaches back in time, maybe back as far as 2013, for data to automatically register people to vote that have had any contact with DMV. And you have to affirmatively opt out of the process.
So that's a great thing to spend time on legislating. I'm sorry.
Well, we've got this clean fuels bill. I voted against that. That's the thing that prevented us from getting a transportation package, and it's so complicated that the Environmental Quality Commission that Ed Armstrong sits on and DEQ have pushed back the implementation of parts of that bill because it's so complicated. And I think that the legislature's attempt to interfere in employer-employee relationships has gotten to kind of a tipping point. We've got a couple of things coming up right now. There's a ballot measure seeking signatures that would go on the November of 2016 ballot that is a gross receipts tax. This is not after-tax money. This is gross receipts.
Ouch.
And so for the ag community, high volume, low margin, and we're going to tax your gross receipts. Lithium Motors, which is a very substantial Oregon company based down in Ashland, has already said if that goes into effect, we're going to leave the state.
Yeah.
I'm one of the few legislators that has publicly come out in opposition. And the pushback is, well, gee, we'll have billions more for schools. I'm sorry, at what cost to the business?
At what cost?
And in places like Washington County and Multnomah County, and I represent little pieces of both of those, the compounding effect of all of these attempts to grab more money from business is just staggering. It's going to... 2016 is going to be a complicated year, and you had asked both about legislative days, and then, of course, we've got a session coming up in February. Legislative days are January 13, 14, and 15. Those are a preview of what the chairman of various committees are going to be pushing forward in the February session. And again, I would refer people to a thing called OLIS, the Oregon Legislative Information System. You can get it on your computer, and it's a real-time opportunity to sort of look into what the legislature is dealing with. So we'll have committee hearings on 13, 14, 15, and those are really the kickoff of the February session. And then my last thought on the February session, when I was out urging people in 2010 to change our Constitution so that we could accommodate these short sessions, I never in my wildest imagination thought that legislative leadership would be so undisciplined that we would be trying to jam through in 5 weeks issues that we couldn't resolve in the 5 months of the preceding session. So there will be a lot of conversation about minimum wage, which the ag community isn't going to like, and I would like to exempt agriculture if I were queen. There are going to be all sorts of issues dealing with housing, and I think we all know that there is a housing crisis.
Absolutely.
But if we end up passing bills that have a chilling effect on people that would possibly develop low-income housing, what have we accomplished? So I think it's going to be a rugged session in 2016.
And for a short session, and I know you're going to be looking at transportation again, and
we are, but the governor has said she doesn't want to move forward until 17. I know that young Representative John Davis, he's a young Republican legislator from out in Washington County, who I hold in very high regard. He's a lawyer, he's whip smart, and one day he's going to be a major presence in the Oregon political landscape. He has introduced a bill, and he and I have talked about it a little bit, not in the substance of the bill necessarily, but more in the concept. And his theory is you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. So we ought to have a bill teed up in case somehow magically ideas coalesce and we could at least get something that deals with particularly freight movement in this state.
Yeah.
With the failure of Terminal 6, and some people might say, well, gee, that's way over in Portland. But it affects onion growers in Ontario. It affects cheese producers in Tillamook. It affects every corner of the state. And we have a failed cargo terminal there for a variety of complicated reasons. So we're looking at other opportunities, but there may be talk about transportation, and I know that the papers, especially the Oregonian, have opined that governor notwithstanding, the legislature ought to show leadership and move ahead with some kind of a transportation package. I don't know what will happen.
Well, Betsy, there's going to be a lot of interesting things happening. I'm looking at some of the repairs. We're still in kind of damage control, except it's hard to feel that way on a beautiful day like this. And
oh, no, it's not. I'm still trying to get the tree out of
my... No, that's right. Betsy, there has no confusion on that.
No, I'm all about damage control, so it's hard to look forward right now very far while people are still digging out. You know,
I got to listening to you, Betsy, and I want to take one other short break for something I'm going to do, and this is for our Tillamook County Library, and they've asked the question, who are the homeless in Tillamook County? And a family of 5 living in a van, someone who lost their home because of medical bills, a disabled vet, or a victim of domestic abuse. We can help our homeless population stay warm and dry this winter by donating a new or used clean tent, tarp, or sleeping bag. You can bring the donations to the Tillamook County Library branch, any branch, beginning Saturday, January 2nd, just this Saturday, through the 26th, for distribution at the Homeless Connect that's going to be on January 27th, and Adventist Community Services Center, Salvation Army, and Street Shepherd Ministry. Blanket sheets and warm coats also needed. You can call the library to find out more, but thank you for your donations. And what a nice thing, because and even on a beautiful, clear blue morning like this morning, it's pretty cold.
It's 30 degrees out there, and if you're living in a tent up in the Tillamook Forest, that's not so good. I want to call out Fred Meyer. They donated a bunch of tents to one of the Veterans Outreach, not tents, tarps, to one of the Veterans Outreach programs. And I think sometimes the good corporate citizens in our communities don't get the kind of appreciation that they deserve. But that was a special need registered by the veteran community, and Fred Meyer stepped up. I hope people do heed the call of the library. Yeah. Most of us, I mean, tree in a kitchen notwithstanding, most of us are so fortunate.
Exactly.
And it's easy to lose track of some of the kind of faceless, nameless people that are really struggling to get by. So I hope people avail themselves of the opportunity to drop off some of those blankets and tarps and coats and mittens and skivvies and everything else that you would think of that folks might.
We're going to have a sock drive. And Tillamook Motors, you can take them to Tillamook Motors for the month, because it's that's for the radio station. But we're gonna this month, I think all of January. We'll
cool.
keep reminding people.
Sign me up for a sack of socks.
There you go. Let's say happy birthday to a few people. Beth Ganger, what a wonderful woman, great teacher. John Cervantes, Hannah, Braden, and Beth White. Happy birthday to all of you. And of course, it's New Year's Eve, so there's some anniversaries. Roy and Claire Peterson and Steve and Nancy Kershaw. And tonight is New Year's Eve. And in addition to reminding all drivers to drive sober, Sheriff Long is calling on everyone to be alert. If you see a drunk driver on the road, call the police right away. If someone you know is about to drive after drinking, take their keys and help them get home safely. We've got to work together to make our roads safer this December and year-round, the sheriff said. And hey, you want to do something safe and fun? Tillamook Rotary has your New Year's Eve comically covered at the Elks. Dinner's at 7. There's a comedy show at 8:30, and Hal, thank you, Rick Haltner and the gang, will be rocking the lodge until 1 in the morning. What do you got planned for New Year's, Betsy?
Well, this is always kind of a difficult night for me because my mother died in the early hours of 2007, New Year's Day in 2007. So since then, it's
In the summertime.
It's a kind of somber time. It's quiet. We worry about drunk drivers, and it's a time for family reflection. And so we're tucked in our own little house and are not going to be out doing very much.
Well, I'll be sharing the same place in just a different house with you.
Well, in the meantime, though, Happy New Year, 2016. I hope when we started the show, you said it's going to be a good year. Your words in God's ear, and Happy New Year.
Well, one other thing. Tomorrow is New Year's Day, and perhaps, I don't know where you're going to be at, but maybe you'd like to join me at 10 in Manzanita for the Polar Plunge. I don't know how I let Lois Albright talk me into this, but the YMCA staff, they're going to be serving hot chocolate and coffee and treats and have a warm bonfire. And anyway, great
Good
way
luck.
to...
I won't be there.
You won't. Oh, gosh darn. Anyway, and remember, crab season, it's finally here. They're going to dump the pots in the morning and can start running on Sunday.
Hallelujah.
I know. Betsy, thanks for the call in.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And thank you, Tillamook.